Fantastic. Looks like we are live, LinkedIn and YouTube. Namaskar, namaste, and welcome to the 47th edition of the show. I know some of you might be wondering that we are on series, in this series, we are on episode 52. But why are we doing episode 47 now? Because if you've been keeping account, I missed the episode 7 for a good reason, and I will share that reason with you in some time. The guest had a new family member, and that is always a joyous moment to, and little things like doing a show can always be skipped. So, with that, new members, those who've joined this show for the first time, welcome to Manage Better. Manage Better is my show. My name is Anshuman Tiwari, and I bring to you people who have achieved something in life, can share and are willing to share their wisdom with us, coaches, consultants, authors. And the first time today, a former monk, right? So that's the first for my show. I will hope that I don't get too nervous during the show, but that's a first. So if I do, you will excuse me. So quickly, obviously you would have seen the posters for the show, so you know the guest. So that's no way history. Pandit Dasa is our guest today. I'll quickly introduce a little bit, and then we get deeper into the show. Those who are new, right? What are you waiting for? You can go to my LinkedIn page or YouTube page and subscribe for regular feeds on this, and I'll remind you again in case you haven't done so. So quickly. And I'll bring Panditji in the session in some time. But he's a keynote speaker, former monk, and he wants to specify that he's a former monk, which I will accede to, and a media authority in future of work, resilience, mindfulness, and mental health, creating a culture of appreciation and mindful communication to foster happier and healthier employees. I will bring him in and let him tell his story. But in summary, having moved from India, the family moved from India in 1980, and then rags to riches, and then again to rags, kind of a story. Uh, so let me not share all of that, because then it's best that he shares it. Okay. So eventually, back in the US, in mid 90s, and then he became a monk for about 15 years, and around 2014 or so, uh, left the robes behind and became a advisor to Fortune 100 and 500 companies on resilience, mindfulness, and bringing the teachings from one world to another, which I always appreciate, because there is only so much you can learn in one space, and if you can benefit, other spaces can benefit from what you've learned. That is really awesome, and that's where most of the innovation also happens. Uh, some of the organizations Pandit Dasa has spoken at are Google, NASA, London Stock Exchange, IBM, Citi, State Farm, Bank of America, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Oracle, and the list is like who's who of the world, so business world. So with that, I have the pleasure and honor of bringing him into the show. Pandit Dasa ji, namaste, and welcome to the show.
Namaste. Well, thank you so much, Shumanji, for having me on your show. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. I'm glad we can finally do this.
And no, we delayed it for a good reason. And congratulations on the new arrival in your family. I hope everything is well. And the first few weeks, I know twice over that it's not something you prepare for, or even if you prepare for, there is always a surprise. So good
Yeah,
that we have you.
yeah. There's no such thing as a preparation for a child, and so, yeah, everything you have to press pause on everything for a little while.
I appreciate that. I'm glad that we stayed in touch so that we are now able to talk to the audience. And I can see that the stuff that we were trying pre-live, which is connecting your audience, has gone live. So your audience is, I can see on my dashboard that your audience is now able to see. So they will get a notification. Fantastic. So they can actually also visit your profile later and verify that. Good. So with that, let's dive into the show. Any opening comments on why you even agreed to be on this show? This is a
Well,
surprise.
yeah, well, I'm always getting requests, and your request looked interesting. I mean, it just looked like you were really trying to get good, positive messages out to your audiences and to the world as a whole. And so, in any time someone is trying to do that, I'm happy to contribute, because that's what I'm trying to do in my own work, is trying to, at least in organizations, help people become better employees, better colleagues, better bosses, better leaders. That ultimately makes their workplace a little bit nicer, more pleasant, happier, and therefore everybody can thrive. So when someone else is trying in their own capacity to spread positive messages, because there's a lot of difficult and painful things happening in the world. So if anyone's trying to spread positivity, then I'm happy to be a part of that. And so that's why I agreed to be on your show.
I am so glad that you said yes, and for this reason, because that's exactly what I've been trying to do for last 3-4 years. Uh, there is a lot of awareness, knowledge, practical experience available with people across the world, and actually, quite serendipitously, a little tongue twister, but I did realize that I already had a little bit of a network globally. What use is that network if I can't bring that network to a set of people who don't have that access? So it's in that spirit that I do invite people, and kind people like you agree. So thank you once again. We'll get into the questions. So format of the show, you are of course for the first time, but some most people in my audience will know. Format is I have certain questions, Panditji, for you, and we will share with you. And post that, we will start accepting audience questions. So audience questions, I will of course curate and pose to you. So you don't have to worry about which question to pick. I'll do that, right? So fair enough. And those who are in the audience already, let me quickly know if you are looking forward to this and if you have a question. And do me a favor, if you came in from LinkedIn, there is a on the page there is a share button. You can actually share and let your audience also know, or your connections know, that you are attending this session. Maybe someone else is also interested in this and can join, and these sessions are always free to air. So if anybody can join, that is always good. More the message reaches to more people. Okay, so we already have some people. Thank you. Okay, even from Turkey. Thank you, Orhan. Dietrich. So I will do a little bit of this. You may not be too used to this, but this is the world we live in, that we have to keep the show engaging a little bit. Okay, getting to the first question, or rather the part that I skipped in your introduction, was the rags to riches part that is there, and I skipped it for a reason, because I thought it is best coming from you. Would you like to take a minute to just share how the world changed between 1980 and 2014 for you and your family?
Yes, definitely. So as you mentioned, my family, my parents, and myself, we migrated to the US in 1980. They came over with little to no money, very simple, humble beginnings. One of the first things they did was to set up a small retail shop on Venice Beach, California. And I'm guessing you have an international audience, so a lot of people may not know exactly where Venice Beach, California is, but now you can Google it and find out, right? So, so it's a beautiful touristy location, and there's a boardwalk where people set up shops. So my parents were selling gift items, simple things, and they were working 7 days a week. So there was no such thing as a weekend for them, because working meant food on the table. So very simple, humble beginnings. I was only 7 years old, just sort of running around Venice Beach, exploring American culture. And, because of their hard work and some luck, some good karma, whatever you want to call it, they were able to, within a matter of 8 years, establish a multi-million-dollar jewelry business. So we began living the American dream, if you want to call it that. And big house on the hill with a swimming pool, a jacuzzi. Our house overlooked all of Los Angeles. So you could see all of downtown Los Angeles. So we were living the life. And everything was great for a while. Then, as life has its ups and downs, in the early 1990s, my parents' jewelry business, actually, the factory caught on fire, and we ended up losing everything. We lost the business. And because of that, we lost the house. We lost everything, right? Everything went to a complete collapse. At that time, my dad was trying to figure out what to do next. So he decided to explore new business opportunities in post-communist Bulgaria. I know you're thinking like Bulgaria. How did we end up there? Well, a lot of countries were breaking apart from the USSR, and Bulgaria was one of them. So he thought to explore business opportunities, which was an interesting idea. So he was importing things from India and selling them there, and that was doing well. But the country was in a really confused state at that time because it had just come out of communism less than a year ago, and no one spoke English. So that made it really challenging. And we went from living in a 6-bedroom house on the hill to a 1-bedroom apartment in post communist Bulgaria. So it was like starting life all over again in a very foreign country and a very foreign culture. Even everything on TV was either in the Bulgarian language or the Russian language. So we couldn't understand anything. There was no entertainment available. No one spoke English. Even the movie theaters, all the movies were 5 or 6 years old because American movies weren't allowed during the communist regime. So it was a time, very difficult time, a lot of change, a lot of new adjustments. There was a lot of anxiety on my part. Also, like, what's going on? How did we end up here? And it was at that time that I actually started a bit of a mindfulness and meditation practice. I mean, I had one before as well, but it was at that time I did it with seriousness because life became serious all of a sudden. So I started a mindfulness practice with some seriousness. And that was helpful for me to stay sort of calm and focused. And remember, there was no internet either at that time. So you really cut off from everything. And we decided to, after 2 years there, move back to the US, this time to the East Coast, to New Jersey, where my parents started another retail business in New York City. Then at one point in 1999, I decided that I need to take a break from everything. And I need to really just sort of take time out for myself. So I decided to go to a monastery in Mumbai, India, to live in an ashram, to live in a monastery, to live with monks and understand sort of like the purpose of life and the meaning of life and how life can be so unpredictable and it can change so much and how you can really go up and down in life. So I wanted to understand how all of this functioned and how all this worked. So I thought I'd go there for a month. Here I am living in this monastery in Mumbai. There's 40 monks that live there. They're actually monks. I'm just a guess at that time. Everybody slept on a hardwood floor. No one had a bed. No one had their own room. No one had a mattress. You just got a thin straw mat. We woke up at 4 in the morning. We would meditate from 5 for several hours a day. And the rest of the day was spent in service, serving one another, serving the community. It was a life of simplicity, humility, and service. And to my own surprise, I fell in love with that lifestyle. I didn't expect to, but I love the simplicity of it. I love the clarity of thought I was developing during living without much. And ended up spending 6 months in India, came back to the US, moved into a monastery in New York City on the Lower East Side. And for those of you, I don't know how many here have been to the Lower East Side, how many of you, those who are watching, have been to the Lower East Side of New York? If not, it's also a very interesting place. Right next to the monastery was a tattoo shop. So I'm just going to describe the scene. Then the next 3 establishments were bars and restaurants. Across the street was a nightclub, underground nightclub. Crazy things happened there. And next to the nightclub was a funeral home. So if you partied too much at the nightclub, the funeral home was right next door. And it was pizza shop and deli. It was middle of chaos. I thought I'd spend maybe a few months there, ended up spending 6 months, total of 15 years as a monk, mostly all of it in New York City. And then,
Oh,
and then 10 years ago, I left that monastic experience and I've been speaking in corporations globally on topics of mindful leadership, workplace culture, and mental health. So I know I took longer than a minute.
no, but it is worth it because I of course know this story, and it's your life. So maybe story is not the right word, but it's your life, and that's for a reason I skipped it because I wanted this experience of hearing or listening to it from you. And I do hope that the audience gets the power of this experience because it's a whole life experience, and not everybody, all of us may not go through such maybe extreme experiences, but in a way we all go through experiences and we all need some calm and composure and um, those monk like stages in our life. We may not pick up the robes, but we may need the skill set. We may need the approach the mindset. And that's the reason why I'm talking to you here today. Sometimes I tell people that these shows I do is like free coaching for me with an audience in the building. So I obviously learn a lot, and I hope that the audience can also learn. So thank you, Panditji, for your very candid, and I was noticing as you were speaking. Of course, you might have shared this many times, so it might be like a back of your hand, but it was a very objective narration of what had happened. There was no unnecessary emotion of either being a victim or a victor of any kind, and that is something that I've already learned from these last 5 minutes. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
We are already starting getting some comments and questions. So, to people who are sharing comments and questions, thank you very much. What we will do is that a little deeper into the show, I will start taking your questions. So comments also, we will start sharing. There are of course some comments from your page on LinkedIn, so that's also welcome. Okay, so getting a little deeper now into the topic that we picked. So mindfulness is, of course, a lot talked about these days, particularly, and maybe it is the outcome of the world we live in. Maybe it is the outcome of the harsh realities of the pandemic that many of us had, and some of us sadly had, deeper losses that we may not be able to ever recover from, but everybody lost something in some way. So maybe mindfulness became a way of responding to that. So it's a little popular as a word these days, but not everybody understands it, and it will take somebody like you with the experience and the knowledge to demystify it for us. So simplified question: what is mindfulness for Pandit Dasa?
So there are many definitions of mindfulness. Even for me, there's quite a few. And I want to touch on one component of it that you just mentioned, that when you were listening to me tell my story, that there wasn't a whole idea of like being a victim of my past, right? And I think one example or one definition of mindfulness is that we stop being the victim, right? That is our choice. We can choose to be a victim as much as we want. We can play victim all we want. And we can blame others, and there have been times when I've sort of blamed my parents for the wrong decisions that they made, like why Bulgaria, this and that. But when I eventually start to look back, like, I needed exactly those experiences to grow. Like, I was living a very comfortable, kind of almost irresponsible life in LA. But that was a serious wake up call when we ended up in Bulgaria, when I had nothing. And I had to really just dig into myself to figure out how to survive and where life is going to go. So, blame, I realize, doesn't take us anywhere. It only leads us into frustration and anxiety and just anger. And blame is unlimited, meaning you can keep blaming everyone else for our problems. So one definition of mindfulness is to not play the victim, to not blame, but to really accept responsibility for what's happening to me in my life. Really, yes, there may be other people who may be contributing to my pain and suffering, but ultimately, how did I end up in this situation? What did I do that got me here, right? So I think that's really important for us to be able to introspect. What did I do? What could I have done differently so I could have avoided this, and then at least learn from it and not to do it again? And so that's one specific sort of definition of mindfulness. A broader one is, being in touch with our mind and emotions and being able to come back into the present moment and being in touch with ourselves. So when I say present moment, if you think about it, a lot of times our mind is either thinking about the negative and painful things from the past, or it's coming up with worst case scenarios about the future. And both of those are really meaningless because they don't contribute anything to our current moment. Because the past is already done. All we can do about the past is learn from it. Reliving the negative aspects and being constantly haunted by the negative things that have happened to us accomplishes nothing, but it just adds to our trauma. If we look at the past and the painful thing and just take a moment to look at it from a distance and analyze, what did I learn and gain from that situation that's adding to my life now? How is that helping me do the work that I'm doing now? How is that thing in the past helping me in my relationships right now, in my professional career right now? And there's always things that the past has added to our present, but we need to be able to identify that so we're not constantly haunted by the past. And planning the future is good. Preparing the future for the future is really important. But again, letting our mind come up with worst case scenarios. That's the problem, because it's a worst case scenario. So it's probably not going to turn out the way we think it's going to turn out. And so why are we coming up with worst case scenarios? Why not just focus on the present, give all our time, attention to what we're doing now, and then let the future reveal itself? And if we give it our best now, then the future will have a positive and beautiful revelation. So, very long, very wordy definition of mindfulness, but basically being in touch with ourselves, coming into the present moment, and getting in touch with our thoughts and emotions. Knowing what emotions I'm going through right now will help us deal with our current situation.
I'm usually not at a loss for words, but right now I am. But as you were speaking, I was trying to relate it to your life before 2014, and I could actually see how these thoughts were shaped, right? And the dominant thought in my mind is that not everyone will have these experience to be able to have this wiser view of the world as you have today, right? What can mere mortals do in somebody who has a normal life, right? Everybody has, of course, challenges, and I'm sure everybody has their own sets of challenges, some more difficult, some less, but not too many people go from a very high flying life in LA and then have nothing and have to actually move countries, not only countries, to go to a country where no support system is available, not even language support system is available, build your life again, then choose to become a monk and take the message. So this is a life which is an unusual life. It's a glorious life, but
Yeah.
unusual. uh, Most of us in the audience and those who will watch this show later also as a recorded version will not have these experiences. So how do we see mindfulness on a day-to-day basis? uh, any pointers from how you, and now you speak to companies and organizations, so you can relate to the corporate world in the same way?
Yeah, well, if we haven't had those experiences, it's fine, because those are pretty wild experiences. I think the one thing is, we can learn from the experiences of others who've had them. So if there's something from my journey that people can relate to, and there's probably something that, I'm sure people have had some reverses in their life, some challenges, some things happened that they weren't expecting, and then it threw their life off course for maybe a year or 6 months. Everyone's gone through something. It's impossible to not have gone through something. So we can find something that they can relate to, and again, see what they can learn from that. And I think we maybe don't spend enough time, right, learning from our past and learning from our mistakes. We end up making the same mistakes over and over again, right? And so one thing is just learning from so many people and so many experiences. And mindfulness is something that you don't have to have had like a spiritual experience to practice like I did, right? It was a very deeply spiritual experience for me to go to a monastery, to live in that monastery, right? That was a very deeply spiritual experience. So it doesn't have to be spiritual or religious for anyone. Again, mindfulness can be practiced in one's home. It can be practiced in the workplace. It can be practiced anywhere and everywhere that you want. And it doesn't even have to involve prayer to a deity or anything like that. It can if you want it to, but it doesn't have to. Mindfulness really is about being able to take a few moments in the middle of busyness, craziness, very hectic schedule, and just finding a moment of calm, pushing all that, being able to push all that aside for a moment for yourself, finding a moment for yourself, being able to gather yourself, gather your thoughts, gather your emotions, come into the present moment, take a few deep breaths, and remind yourself of something that in life right now that you're grateful for, right? Because otherwise, the world will overwhelm us. We'll end up believing that, oh, so many things are going wrong. But when we clear all that out and just gather ourselves and realize, I have a roof over my head, I have some people in my life that care for me, and there are some people I care for, I have food to eat, we should be grateful. We should really be grateful for the basic, the little things. And I think we need to remind ourselves of how many simple things in life that we have to be grateful for. How many things we have right now without which our life would be so difficult and painful. So mindfulness can be practiced by everyone at any given time. While you're driving in your car, you can be grateful for what you have. While you're taking a walk in the park, you can be grateful that you're able to do that. When we're with our family members, we can spend quality time with them without one of these and really make it quality time. When we're talking to a colleague, maybe put this aside so they don't think that they're sharing their attention with this, that they have to compete with this, that if this goes off, you might be tempted to do one of these while talking with them. So that's mindfulness, that, hey, there's a person in front of me. I'm going to put this thing aside and really focus on the person. And mindfulness can just be that much, because that is how we go deeper in our relationships, when we give each other time and attention. And that communicates that I value who you are and I value your time and the fact that we're having this interaction. And that goes for workplace, colleagues, and family, both.
Really well said. And while you were giving this example of the phone, I remember the first time this hit me was around 12 years ago, and I still remember that conversation. Uh, I was doing this session with my team member that, hey, what was something that you are annoyed with, and what can I stop? How can this our team become a little better? And generally, most of the responses were that we should plan this and we should do a retreat, and that one guy later on came to me and said that I didn't want to speak up in the meeting, but when at least I am speaking to you, if you can keep your phone aside, I'll be grateful. Uh, so it was the first time this hit me that, and he was one of the few people I was doing this to. And then I thought it over that how must he be feeling, and he might have been harboring this pain and difficulty, and he was fairly junior to me, so I'm sure he took up, found some courage to say that. And we're still good friends, and I thanked him and I said, look, I wouldn't have known, for my life I wouldn't have known, because I normally don't do this, but for whatever reason, for this one person and maybe other people as well, I was regularly doing it, including texting while I was speaking to him. So, and he
Wow.
pointed that out. So I think, all this makes perfect sense to me as you were speaking.
Well, one thing is that,
Yeah.
it took a lot of courage from him to do that, but it took a great amount of courage and strength and humility on your part to hear that and to make the change. And I think that is a perfect example of mindfulness, because a lot of us could be like, I'm senior to you, get lost, give your opinions to someone else. That could easily be and could have been your approach, but you chose to act differently. And I think that is inspiring.
Thank you. And I mean, I do remember the moment where, even though it is 12 years, I do remember the exact moment, because it's a very small moment, but these are the moments that stay with you. You may forget the year, but you remember the moment, and that's the moment where something switches. And after that, I've been very conscious that I shouldn't be repeating that one thing. I'm sure I've repeated it, but not too often. And since I'm mindful or conscious. So there you go, to our audience, and this is going live to Pandit Dasa's audience as well. You got a slightly more worldly example, and also an explanation of what mindfulness can be. And we deliberately try to keep it little corporate world, so that it could be beneficial to you. And it doesn't sound like some esoteric, mumbo jumbo that somebody with the rope can also only do. This is for all of us, right? And like Panditji explained that it's not, uh, we don't have to become a monk to think like one, right? So we can, and I, there is similar story like yours, Jay Shetty's. He keeps talking about the monkey mind versus the monk mind, and so that word keeps coming to me that otherwise our minds are more like monkey minds, and we are aspiring to be monk mind. Okay. Some We'll take some questions. We are actually half an hour into the show, so middle of the question, either questions or some comments, and there are some wonderful comments, so I'll share a little bit. I think Gabriel from your, you might recognize him, and quite a few comments. We have somebody from Turkey as well, so thank you. One statement came in from Francis. So he's followed up the statement with this question: how would you describe that life in a sentence? Um,
The
Challenging, but
the monk life?
the 6 months, the first 6 months.
Oh, the 6 months in one sentence.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a little hard to describe within one sentence. But I would definitely say I can even just describe it in 2 words as eye opening and maybe another 2 words, mind opening.
Uh, there you go, Francis. So challenge accepted and responded. And Sundar, thank you very much for your comments. Rishabh has a question around this. We've tackled this question a little bit, but since this is also an audience-based show, let's look at it. Does becoming a monk helps us to know what is our worth and helping us to know the purpose of our life in the long run, right? So, obviously, since you've been there, you are in a better position to take this. Anything to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, it did help me understand my worth and purpose in life, right? That's the journey that I had to go on to understand that. However, you don't have to go on that specific journey to understand your worth and your purpose. That can be done through introspection and through some guidance and coaching, right? If we take time out for ourselves, we will understand our purpose. What's meaningful in life for us? What gives me joy? What gives me purpose? Are we spending enough time even thinking about this question, writing down the answers, discussing these questions with others, and helping, just to decipher all of that? Or because, life keeps us busy and we like being busy a lot of times, and so busy that we forget to ask ourselves the question, what does give me purpose? What value am I adding to myself, to my family, and to the world around me? So, my life was chaotic. It was unusual, irregular. And so I had landed in a monastery for a month, and ended up being a 15-year period, which I wasn't expecting. So my life took me on that road to help me discover my purpose. But we don't have to in that journey. If you have time to spend a month or so, why not? It can't hurt. It will be an eye-opening experience. It will be. It'll be very powerful. You learn so much about yourself. And the thing is, we don't know much about ourselves. And I think that is a problem. If you get a moment, we immediately pick this up. It's almost like we're afraid to be with ourselves or by ourselves, even for 10 seconds. We need to keep ourselves distracted from ourselves. Why not allow ourselves even going for a walk without the phone? Take a half-hour walk, leave the thing behind. Let your mind explore your inner world and your outer world and see what comes up. See, we will understand our purpose when we give time for that purpose of discovering our purpose. But if we keep ourselves cluttered and busy and distracted with 10 different social media channels and 10 different news outlets, then we're never making time for ourselves, and then we can't discover that purpose. So living in a monastery, it removed all of that for a while for me. Not for the full 15 years, but for a little bit. But so if we take time out during our day and our week and our month and our year, we'll discover that purpose. even without having to become a monk.
While you were saying this, it occurred to I recently I was sharing this with somebody that our purpose doesn't come in an email. So what are we checking our phones for? So if you are looking for your purpose, you have to give that space and time for it to emerge and pop out. And it will certainly not pop out in a WhatsApp message or an email or something similar. So Rishabh, thank you for your question. Great question, and I hope the response was useful. Okay, keeping the audience questions going. I It is my duty now to bring this. My father is in the show, so he rarely attends these shows. So I've done my bit by bringing his comment online. So that is all I can do. If you have a question, Dad, let me know. But we will move to Swati Dubey's question. Um, how has mindfulness helped you in dealing with uncertainty in life? And obviously, the underlying question is that how can it help us also in dealing with uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned about life is that it's uncertain. I mean, how can you be certain about anything in the future? We don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now in the world. Like, we have no idea in 1 minute what's going to happen, in 30 seconds, what's going to happen. So, the unknown, it's unknown and therefore it's uncertain. And so, I think we have to be able to accept the fact that their life is going to be filled with one uncertainty after another. And we don't net so the it's all a shift in the mindset, right? So mindful is a shift in mindset that I'm going to welcome the uncertainty and not be anxious about it. I don't know what's going to happen to the stock market tomorrow. We don't know how this whole war thing is going to turn out. We don't know what's going to happen to the economic systems of the world. But we can't keep thinking about that. Again, all we have the power to do, which is what I've learned through mindfulness, is to really pay attention to what I'm doing now, give everything I have to the work I'm doing now, give everything that I can to the people that are in my life right now that are adding value to my life, that I add value to their life. And in that approach, with that approach, I will be peaceful and happy in the moment. And that's the most important thing, really giving it our best right now and being attentive and caring to the people around us. That is how we bring joy to each moment. And that is how we not worry so much about the uncertainty. Because even when that uncertainty comes, if we're living our best life now and caring for the people in our life now, when the uncertainty and anxious moments come, then all of these people will be there for us to support us during that uncertainty. Where if we've just been focused in a selfish way, not cared about others, then when that uncertainty comes and that difficult time comes, no one's going to care what's happening, and then we have to go through that all alone.
No, fantastic. I think Swati, you had asked the question, so I hope you have a response. I quite like the fact that how you said that everything is actually uncertain. So the only thing certain is that everything is uncertain, right? So
Yeah.
in a way, every moment that we are living is a gift, and whatever next moment might be there, might not be there, everything, all of that is uncertain anyway, and all we are doing is to prepare well for that and let it unfold, like you said earlier, that let life reveal its purpose for us. Really well said. There is uh, so I don't know Spanish. Looks like Spanish. Do you?
No.
Uh, since it came from your page, I kind of took a chance that maybe. So Anastasio, if you are still in the show, if you can put this question or remark in English, or Hindi, which is unlikely, but if you can do that in English, then it will be grateful. We can take your question. You've asked two, so I thought let me give it a chance. Okay, we have somebody from my audience, Murthy SN, regular on my shows, and his question is, would like to know Panditji's views on how can mindfulness help us expand our capacities in what and how much we can take on to execute. Also, how can it expand our execution capabilities? He's, of course, like me, he's working for a full-time job, and half the time we are more worried about how can we get better at work and do more. So how does this help in at our work? Which was anyway a question that I wanted to ask. Is that all this is fine? This is living the good life in a more noble sense, and being more prepared, being more mindful. But we are going to work for a long time. Most people in corporate are going to work for a long time, maybe start at 20, 22, and go on till 60, 65, and maybe longer. How does this help in that? Anything on this?
Yeah, so how does it help expand our capacity and ability to perform to our fullest capability? Well, so one thing is, I think that one reason that we're not able to perform to our full capacity is because we have a very cluttered mind, right? There's a lot going on in our mind. It's like if you have a car that's filled with luggage and way too much, it's going to slow the car down. It's just going to take up more gas. It's not going to be as efficient. Like it's just so heavy, the car, you put so much luggage in there, the car's weighing down. So I think we also have a lot of stuff in our mind, in our head, that's weighing us down. And a lot of it's not even essential and relevant to us. As I mentioned earlier, we spend a lot of time remembering negative things from the past. They weigh us down. Because when we remember and recall them, we end up living that whole situation again. We're reliving that whole thing. We're not even in the present. We're living in the past in that moment. Or again, all the worries about the future. All of these things are weighing us down. And when we get weighed down by this, that naturally slows us down and prevents us from taking on new stuff that's meaningful, right? That's meaningful in our life. So it's really important. What I like to do is call it closing the apps in the mind. So, in my new book, which is going to be coming out in about a month, it's called Mindfulness for the Wandering Mind, appropriately, the wandering mind, right? So I talk about the whole concept of closing the apps in our mind. The apps, meaning the apps we don't need, because we have so many apps open up here that we're not using right now. And if we can close those out, then naturally we clear up some space to take on more and do more. And also, for us to execute something, we need to have a clear mind to do it properly. Because the more clutter that's up here, the more chances of us making mistakes with the project we're working on now, right? And then we try to multitask, which is also not really a thing. We don't really multitask. We can't really work on two tasks at the same time. We'd need two brains and two minds to do that, and four arms to do that, right? But we don't have that. And basically, there's even research showing that those who try to multitask get less done and make more mistakes.
Yeah.
Because when we're doing one thing, our mind can only focus on one. And the moment you switch to another task, that task has been left alone now. You can't really function on that. If you're trying to send an email while reading another email, you're going to mess up something. And I've had this experience, and I sent an email, I'm like, gosh, I didn't say what I wanted to say, or I said the wrong thing. So I think focusing on one task at a time, clearing out the clutter in our mind, it's just like if you're on the road and there's a ton of traffic, you can't get anywhere. So our mind is a traffic jam. When we clear out the traffic jam, we can actually make progress, get to where we want to be in a more pleasant way, and get there faster as well.
So, thank you, Pandit Dasa. So Murthy had asked this question. Murthy, I hope you have some response, and I truly loved your take on the multitasking thing. And there is enough research, and I've had other guests on the show as well, and we've discussed this point a few times. And one summary we found is that especially two cognitive tasks can't be performed together. We get the illusion that we are actually multitasking, but the moment there are two cognitive tasks which require application of brain or any sensory organ, we actually can't perform. So the illusion that we multitask is actually uh, quite foolhardy, and the word these days is solo tasking. So I talk about a lot that let's try solo tasking. Can we just focus on a task for 20 minutes, and that's it. Most of the things that we want to do at work can be done in those 20 minutes. Okay, we have quite a few questions coming in. I will just pick a couple of representative kind of questions. Because Dhal, it's easy to forgive but not to forget. Any tips on that? So, because we are not sure what prompted this question, but it seems like a common one. So, all of us go through something which we will want to forgive and forget, but sometimes we can't. And this is quite common.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything.
Well, I don't know if we really can forget, right? If it's in our memory, we still remember the painful thing that happened to us as kids. So I don't know if it's possible to forget, right? And the point is, again, as I kind of hinted to this before, we can try our best to forgive to the best of our ability because that's healthy for us. Because holding on to it, it's like, I remember the Dalai Lama once said that when you're angry, it's like holding a hot coal. You're the only one getting burnt, not the other person. They're not holding the hot coal. They did it and they're gone, right? They forgot about it maybe, but we haven't. How long do we want to hold the hot coal? That's our choice. When do we want to drop it? That's our choice. So we have to just ask ourselves, well, what can I learn from that situation? What did I do? Not what the other person did. What did I do to get myself into that situation? What were my actions? How could I have avoided that? If we don't analyze it, we'll make the same mistake again. We'll put ourselves back in a situation with someone else who hurt us in a similar or slightly different way. So we haven't fully learned our lesson. I think the only way to move on, because I don't think you can forget. I mean, I still remember all the crazy stuff that happened to me. I haven't forgotten it. I've tried to learn from it. And I'm like, well, those who did hurt me or cheat me, they have their own lessons to learn and they'll learn it through their own karma. My point is, and I don't need to wish something bad happens to them. I'm like, well, let the universe take care of that. Let me just focus on me. What am I learning from that? How do I move forward? How do I not get myself back in that situation? Because see, how we said that history repeats itself? We have a tendency to put ourselves back in these situations over and over again, keep getting hurt. So we really have to make an effort to learn and not get back in that situation, so that when you see yourself about to enter that situation, you can be like, wait, this looks very similar to what happened, and I remember the result. I'm going to avoid this one. But it doesn't mean now that we live our whole life in fear that, oh, now I'm going to be careful with all my friendships. I'm not going to take I can't trust anyone anymore. No, and that's also not a healthy way of living. You have to, again, trust. You have to be able to move forward. And that's where it requires our maturity and wisdom and intelligence, and even some, more mature guidance from around us to help us. Maybe someone outside of us who we trust, who's mature, can say, hey, you know what? This situation looks very similar. Probably better not to go there. Or say, hey, actually, this situation is very different. It looks like we could proceed with caution. So we need some outside help sometimes.
Sure. Really well said. I liked how you said that you can forgive but maybe not forget, and that's not in our control actually, because the mind has its own mind, rightfully so.
Yeah.
And the and the way I see it, because and thank you for the question, because is that if you've actually forgiven, then you've moved on. If you've truly forgiven, you've moved on. You are not really carrying that baggage, and it doesn't matter whether you forget or not, because you've moved on from that situation, and happens to everybody. So good question, thank you very much. What I'm trying to do is to show a glimpse of your book, and I'm actually struggling a little bit, but let me give it a quick shot, and so let's see whether it works out or not. Um,
Yeah, and basically the book should be out by the end of July, and it'll be available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. There you go. You found it.
yeah. So no, I had kept it, but I was struggling a little bit to present it on this. So, guys, everybody in the call, this is the book, which is this is a sneak peek, in a way. You want to take a minute or so, Panditji, to talk about this book that's coming up in August, I think.
Yeah, so it will be released. It'll be available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, Books a Million, and everywhere else books can be found. And I really wrote this book for the corporate audiences where I give speeches to. Again, it says like life-changing tools for managing stress and improving mental health at work and in life in general. So the book is filled with these tools. Everything that I'm talking about, I speak about all of these things and more in the book. The book is really meant to be helping us go through the different challenges we experience in our life, whether it's work, whether it's relationships, whether it's with our own mind, right? Whatever it is, it's helping us deal with the obstacles and challenges that life throws in our path, which are going to happen constantly. Anytime you overcome one obstacle, another one is going to show up. That's just how life is. And so I hope that the book is something that people will keep on their desk and not on their bookshelf, so that it's something that you can turn to easily. It's your sort of go-to guide on a daily basis you can use. And what I also do is towards the end of the book, I give a lot of mindfulness techniques and practices that we can use in different locations, how we can practice mindfulness in different locations, in different situations. So I've given lots of practical things. I didn't want it to be some philosophical thesis. I wanted it to be a practical how-to book. I kind of wanted it to serve as a GPS for our life, right? A GPS, like, okay, turn right here, turn left there. There's an accident up ahead, slow down, right? There's a car parked on the side, slow down, be careful. So I kind of want this book to serve as a GPS for our work, our professional and our personal life. So that's really what the book is about. I'm just putting my own experiences in there. I'm putting in there things that I teach corporate audiences globally. Again, it's full of practical things that I think will help us, assist us through our day-to-day experiences.
No, really well said. It summarizes the book, and we will all look forward to, at least I surely will, to the release. Hopefully, it will soon be available in India as well. We'll look forward to that, and sounds very promising, because that's something we need, right? And I'm glad you said that you want people to have the book on their desk and not on the bookshelf, because if you could see my bookshelf, I'm sitting in between books, and I have often wondered that how many of these books have I touched recently, um, and the answer is not many.
Yeah.
So even though I read quite a bit, but still I find that, unless, and there are a few books which are always at my desk, so those are the books that actually help. So thank you very much. We still have time for. So I wanted to ask you a question a little bit, and this is also summarizing 3-4 questions that we have got. And since we don't have time for 3-4 questions, I'm trying to bring it into one common one. So break it down a little bit for us. So mm, most of us, and you speak to a lot of people in corporate world through your sessions and keynote speeches and that kind of stuff. So what can we do on a daily, weekly basis to be more mindful and navigate this corporate culture, or the toxicity that we often talk about of the corporate culture? And there have been some questions, some have referred to very, for example, high sales targets that I have a toxic work culture. I'm bringing in a aspect of, navigating corporate politics or the likes. So wanted you to break it down in the next few minutes to in a way that how can mindfulness and the likes help us in navigating this kind of corporate situation.
Yeah, corporate culture is something that really it starts with the leadership and their mood. It all they're going to set the tone for everything. And so it's really important that leaders are leading mindfully, that they are leading by example, like asking and doing the things that they're asking others to do. And not only that, leaders should also take responsibility for the overall mental health of their employees and culture. It's not that they have to become their therapists, but be mindful that if someone is struggling in some capacity, to have empathy, to care for them. That is how we change corporate culture, is through caring for one another and supporting one another. Because if leaders can understand that when an employee feels supported and cared for, valued, respected, and appreciated, they will actually outperform the leader's own expectation. And there was this one research done at Wharton Business School where when they were going to make fundraising calls, they divided their fundraising team into two. One team made fundraising calls as they normally would. The other one received a call of appreciation from their supervisor before they made the calls. The second team that received the phone call from the supervisor made 50% more calls than the first team, simply because they were appreciated. So corporate culture has to change through the leadership's mindset and mentality, but really every single individual is responsible for corporate culture. So every single one of us can look at what our colleagues are doing and appreciate them, value them, respect them, even if you're not in a position of leadership. If you see something that someone is doing nicely, or somebody said something positive in a meeting that inspired you, tell them that. Don't just keep it within. Say, hey, I really appreciated what you said. That inspired me. Or if you see someone as a really nice person, you can compliment their traits. Like, hey, I noticed that you're always working so hard. I noticed that you're always so helpful. Thank you so much for that. Like, making each other feel positive and connected, it creates a sense of belonging in the workplace. And that sense of belonging is what ultimately will it really will transform workplace culture into something toxic to a place where we want to be, because we're spending more than half of our waking time in the workplace. It only makes sense that we want to spend that time in a way that's not going to negatively impact my health through all stress and toxicity. So we all are responsible for creating that positive and mindful workplace culture, which is all components that I discuss in my book, right? We're all responsible for creating and contributing to that culture, whether it's positive and mindful or whether it's toxic. So we shouldn't just sit back and say, well, it's the leader's responsibility. Yes, they definitely hold a majority of it, but we can still change our immediate team culture by how we interact with our colleagues.
And I'm glad you put it this way, because as you were speaking, I recalled an example from a recent past which might be useful to our audience. Is that whenever I am in a situation, and I manage a fairly large team in my day job, and whenever I'm in a situation where somebody in my team has not performed to the level that was expected and has come up short, my normal tendency used to be to inquire, investigate, maybe blow up and everything. And in the last few years I've started thinking that how many times in the past week have I not achieved any of my targets? So if I have an excuse to give to my global managers, surely this person has his or her own challenges. So let me try and understand those challenges, and if I can help the person overcome those challenges, the chances that they will give their heart and soul next time will be even more. So I have tried to put myself, and I more often than not, I am not fulfilling the promises that I've made to my managers on a weekly basis. I'm better than many. As you get senior, you obviously are filtering up, but I still miss out on many things. So if we apply the same yardstick to our teams, we actually understand their situation much better. So glad that I'm just trying to give a corporate context to what you just shared, and glad that all of this is included in your book. We are pretty much toward the end of the show, Pandit Dasa ji. So what we will do is that, with a request to the audience that if your questions could not be taken live during the show, my apologies. This is a format that we try and take as much as we can, and I got 1 hour from his time, family time. It's a Saturday morning, so I'm grateful that he was able to give us this time. So thank you very much once again. And what we will do is that, my request to the audience is that they can, of course, follow you. They should follow you on LinkedIn, and you already have 74,000 or 72,000 followers. So a few more people. and you post out wonderful content, so that itself will help solve some questions. And if they have some questions, they can reach out to you, and based on your time and availability, try and answer some of those questions. With that request, I will thank you and my audience once again, and wish you a wonderful day and weekend ahead. And someday we'll have once again a longer conversation around this. So thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.